Hi, welcome back to my channel. I know in my previous video I only said that my minimum goal for the spring break was to make 2 videos, but I kind of thought about it and I recently just doom scrolled my notes app and I actually have like a little note dedicated to ideas for videos on this channel, and there's a lot that I need to get through, so I gotta kind of pump these out a little faster because these ideas just keep piling up and I'm not making any videos. But if you are a returning viewer, I feel like there's only 2 of you and I probably know you personally. Thank you so much for coming back to watch another video by me. And if you are a new viewer, my name is Shannon and I kind of just have this channel dedicated to my interest in art history and my desire to provide a digital storage space for all the personal research I've done on niche artists or art topics that I find really interesting to talk in great detail about. So today I wanted to talk about this very specific medium of body art, and this one artist in particular named Anna Mendieta, who I have been really interested in her work for some period of time. I think I first discovered her in like 2021 when I saw like a photograph of her on Twitter or Tumblr somewhere, I don't remember. I actually have one of her artwork pieces reposted on my Instagram, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite piece done by her, but I would definitely say it's the most thought-provoking and kind of really represents for what she stands for in her artwork and her creations. So basically what I find so interesting about body art is that there is always a major theme of the relationship of the body and the mind, explored in different kinds of work consisting of feats of physical endurance that are basically usually designed to test the limits of the human body. Body art is often very generally, I've noticed, concerned with issues of gender and personal identity. It usually highlights the visceral or abject aspects of the human body, focusing on very bodily substances or this overall general theme of nourishing oneself. In body art, I think it's so beautiful that the body is seen as kind of like this vehicle for language. Body art consists of a very wide range of art from starting about from 1960 and encompasses a variety of different approaches. It does include a lot of performance art, like I touched on very briefly, where the artist is directly concerned with the body in the form of improvised or choreographed actions. Compared to performative art, body art is also used for explorations of the body in a variety or with different types of media, including painting, sculpture, photography, film, and video. Many body artwork pieces were very highly confrontational pieces performed in front of an audience, and these performances usually ask audience members not only to question their role as spectators, but also to willingly get uncomfortable due to what the piece's message provokes. When artworks included highly sexual aspects or involved the infliction of pain in their work, the audience was led to consider their own agency in the performances. For example, you've probably heard of her in many performances by the famous body artist Marina Abramoff. Audience members felt as if they had to physically intervene in the performance to protect her from potentially harming herself and causing actual serious self-inflicted harm upon herself. However, today the artist I really wanted to touch on was Anna Mendieta. So Mendieta was actually born in Cuba and moved to the state of Iowa at the age of 12 with her sister as part of a U.S. government asylum program for adolescents after the Cuban Revolution. The trauma of this dislocation from her family and homeland is a very recurrent theme in her work, and honestly, I would say it's like the main theme that her entire, collection of artwork is revolved around. She eventually enrolls at the University of Iowa, and upon completing her undergraduate degree, she actually began her graduate studies in art. She first trained as a painter, but Mendieta quickly grew dissatisfied with this medium and transitioned into the university's interdisciplinary studies involving her artwork. In her work, she has this sustained use of the body's simplified and very often nude form to depict both presence and its opposite. Absence is a very essential component to her work, whether denoting the human or the ethereal. She is very famously known for these earth body artworks that she famously used with the natural world and her own body as powerful mediums of expression and interrogating humanity's relationship to the land and the cosmos as we exist. By placing her own female body, the outline of her figure, back into the elements of Earth, she utilizes the emerging feminist theories of her time of binding the personal to the political. She would make these body imprints and take photographs of these in various landscapes, including the muddy creek beds of Iowa, the autumn woods, or upstate New York. And these silhouettes were based on her own body and fashioned using both additive and subtractive processes. She once quoted that, "My art is the way I reestablish the bonds that unite me to the universe." In one of her best-known pieces, titled Imogen de Yagul, the artist uncommonly remains in the resulting photograph lying in a Zapotec tomb. Her nude body appears to be covered with white flowers, and the foliage that obscures her face kind of seems to grow from her body and turn her unclothed form into both a lifeless corpse and a meeting of great functionality. Her use of this abstracted feminine form is, like I said, very often fused with the landscape that kind of denotes her finally finding her home in the more universal Mother Earth rather than the displaced state of Iowa she was put in. I also kind of see it as this final acceptance into the universal cycles of life and death, and kind of eloquently speaks on her concerns surrounding belonging and rootedness and an underlying reliance on her female mysticism. Something I found really interesting was Mendieta worked very extensively with feathers, and she kind of used feathers as a way of connecting the human body to the earth and also the avian kingdom, like the sky kingdom. And what's really interesting is feathers have played a very important role in ancient northern and Mesoamerican art. As you probably know or have seen yourself in museums, Aztec artists created very elaborate headdresses and masks with feathers from very sacred birds, and also wove feathers together in tapestries. The Aztecs saw the feather as this symbol of traveling between states, or of this thing of moving between one state and another. For example, in the afterlife, kind of navigating life after death. For example, if we are going to navigate this back to Mendieta's work, she has a very famous piece from 1977 from her Silhouette series. It is actually untitled, and she actually uses this meaning to create a profound experience of her work in between being connected and this idea of loss. In this piece, as you can see, Mendieta creates a silhouette of her body into the earth. This time her shape has been dug into the ground and filled with very large white feathers, and this feathered shape has been surrounded by newly growing grass, which is another allusion to the inevitable cycles of death and rebirth. She kind of uses the Aztec theme of feathers to represent a liminal state between life and death, creating kind of with this piece a portal between both of these worlds. I feel like it's also this idea of kind of boundary crossing in a way, and you can see this a lot more in the piece that I mentioned before, which is called Bird Transformation, the one I posted on my Instagram. And in Bird Transformation, she actually made this shortly after her return from her first trip to Mexico. And in this piece, she has adhered bird feathers to the body of another woman. And in doing so, she kind of creates this boundary crossing transgression between human and animal, and this very middle center point between the four ideas of earth, body, human, and animal. Despite her whole body being covered in feathers, and this is an allusion to the feathered masks that the Aztecs would wear in sacred rituals, she allows the female genitals and the female form to remain unfeathered and very intact in the photograph, as you can see. For Mendieta, in her work, sexuality cannot be separated from nature. And in her eyes, this refiguring of the human body in this piece is kind of the source of transcendence. She actually also wanted to create this piece in dedication to the unheard voices of the Cuban woman after the revolution and the countless number of cases of rape and domestic violence that were perpetrated against women during this time. Her art in this piece specifically is kind of this attempt to demonstrate that a woman's body is holy and not profane as science and men have kind of conceived it to be in the past. She points to this idea that female divinity is in nature, and specifically life on Earth itself, rather than an abstract or this otherworldly, like, fantastical deity. Mendieta once said about her artwork, quote, "I have thrown myself into the very elements that produced me." This sentiment is probably most pointedly expressed through her Silhouette series, one of the pieces I just showed you earlier with the outline with the feathers in it, except in this one particular piece, she creates an outline of her body on a beach in the city of La Ventosa, Mexico. And instead of feathers this time, she fills this body outline with red tempera. And as the tide rises and the ocean waves crash over it, the shape gradually, inevitably, erodes away, and the color also dissipates into the sea until finally nothing has remained, and it's like her imprint was never there. This idea of washing away all the evidence of her work and this piece, kind of also, very recurring themes here, evokes this sense of the cycle of life and birth and death. And something else Mendieta also really specialized in was film. And although I'm not much of a film person, as much as I would like to be, I've tried. I'm just not a movie person. I can't just sit there and watch something. I've found this sounds really annoying and like pretentious, and I'm genuinely not saying this to like sound all like book smart or something, but I genuinely just do prefer reading the words and kind of being able to visualize this own experience in my head rather than having it given to me. But that being said, I do enjoy certain films and certain movies, and I can watch movies. It's just that I prefer books. But anyways, sorry, I was like on a personal tangent. But Mendieta specialized in a lot of films, and like I said, although I don't like really like films, I've found her film work to be really interesting. One film I watched by her, I honestly don't remember the source of it. I'm going to try to find it. It was very brief. I wouldn't even call it a film, like, very short clip. I found really interesting in particular because I have noticed this trait myself as I've studied languages, very particularly in Romance languages such as Spanish and French, which I'm actually taking right now due to my language requirement for my political economy degree. Super interesting language. But I've always noticed that the letter E always appears at, or usually appears at the end of every word to designate its gender, to be feminine. And it's always the feminine words. In this certain film by Mendieta, she writes the word Bassam on her chest and kiss him in English. And at the end of the film, the final E falls off the edge of the body as kind of like this idea that personal pronoun cannot be contained by one person alone. Mendieta's work is, as you can tell by this tangent, is very strongly connected with the feminist art movement and this fluidity of gender and manipulation of her own body parts to blur the line between male or female identification. She has a lot of subversive self-portraits that kind of distorts this societal notion of beauty while calling gender constructs into question as well. She was never really interested in the formal qualities and methods of art, which is why she ended up abandoning painting in the first place in her early years of her career. And she decided to be more magnetized towards body art and film because she said she was more inclined to feel the emotional and sensual aspects of creating art rather than the formal methods of it. A few months later, after her success actually started to take off and her artwork started rolling down the hill and gaining momentum and actual recognition, unfortunately, back in New York, Mendieta died suddenly and tragically by falling 33 floors from the window of the apartment she shared with her boyfriend Andre onto the roof of a deli. Many passerbys have noted that the indent her body created upon impact was this very awful symmetry and likeness to her work with the Silhouette works and the Silhouette series, where she would leave a presence of her imprint and her body on these natural surfaces. It is still questioned today if Andre was actually the one to push her and whether this was a suicide or self-inflicted, or whether Andre and her had a fight and actually pushed her out the window. Andre, after the trial, was actually accused of committing second-degree murder, even though neighbors of the couple had heard the woman scream no, and Andre was seen with scratches on his face. Andre quoted that the two had been arguing over the fact that he was becoming more successful than Mendieta at the time because he also was an artist. And I guess he claimed that this was a fact that was enough to cause her to commit suicide. Mendieta's artwork was actually used in these court hearings as evidence to back up the claim that her death had been a suicide due to her corpse's imprint being so similar to her previous work and her previous themes in her previous series, unfortunately. However, despite this verdict, Mendieta's family and close friends denounce this completely. They completely reject this absurd notion and claims that her work was about life and power and energy and not about actual death or suicide. On the one hand, after this very unfortunate and disheartening trial for the art world, there is a tremendous sense of great loss, that there is this talent that could have flourished and could have lived longer. Like, how many more inspirational pieces could she have created? How much more was she planning on creating and showing to the rest of the world? On the other hand, after her death is what actually kind of blew up her work and is why she is considered such a famous figure today, unfortunately. And actually, much of what we look at now are works that she never even chose to exhibit before her death. A lot of the early work that we see is actually just slides left in boxes that she never published or was planning on showing to us. In 1992, after the trial, 500 protesters gathered around a small Soho gallery in New York holding signs that asked, "Where is Anna Mendieta?" And this is to be known as the Anna Mendieta protest, because inside the art gallery there was an exhibition that was being run by the Guggenheim that was an exhibition of Carl Andre's, her ex-boyfriend's work, which was only 7 years after Mendieta's death. These protesters kind of used this to fuel this argument that the male-dominated art industry had already forgotten Mendieta's impact, and they were very visibly furious at the idea that Andre's work would even be considered being exhibited after the trial and after everything that happened. Despite all these unfortunate events and kind of taint to her career, 30 years after her very untimely death and murder trial, Anna Mendieta still remains to be this ultimate symbol of sexism and seedy injustices of our art world. Fusing art and life, Mendieta took risks, and by being able to experiment with performance and other very unconventional mediums of art at a time when the market had no real interest in them. Because of her very early displacement from her family and her home, the trauma that was produced in her early life, with this, Mendieta was able to become kind of this lifelong champion of the marginalized and the minoritized in the art world, whether that be with racism, sexism, or geography. Much of the passion that went into making her work was stoked by a desire to have everyone recognize these considered outsiders or other bodies, to accept humanity as one throbbing organism rather than this whole world of disjointed individuals. Her work is still continuously described by art historians and critics today as groundbreaking, ecofeminist, and prophetic, and a threat to the patriarchy. In my own understanding, I think her work is a reminder to ourself that ourself is fleeting and it will be here ready to accept the permeance or impermeance of the world. So to conclude, like I say at the end of every video, I hope you take away something from this. I hope you learned something from it. I hope you gain a sense of this general idea that with this physical presence we were given, using the motifs of Mendieta's work without considering any like confounding factors of fate or this idea of prophecy, I hope you are able to gain this general idea that no matter what will be given to us, whether that be positive or negative, we are able to learn how to adapt. We are able to learn how to mold. And there's this kind of inevitable nature of human beings that we can genuinely adapt to anything that is given to us. And with that, we can react to leave our personal impact on the world no matter what is thrown at us. With that, I hope, like I said, take away something great from this, or maybe you just thought this was an interesting video. But nevertheless, if you made it to the end of this video, I thank you very greatly. Like I said, a lot of personal interest and passion goes into making these, and you know, like I said in the beginning, I'm gonna keep trying to pump these out as much as I can with the little free time that I have. But thank you so much for watching. Watch out for my third video this week. Honestly, I'm feeling really motivated after this because this was honestly really fun to make. Maybe there will be a fourth video this spring break. I feel like I'm only telling this to myself because nobody else really watches these except for myself, but it's fine. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and watch out for my next video.